town has an urban legend. A story about a half-crazed creature who haunts Lover's Lane. His victims vanish into thin air with little but a few drops of blood to suggest what their gruesome fate might have been.
I was just a little boy, but I remember it like it was yesterday. I woke up one night because something was scraping at the window. I looked up and there was this thing staring into the window at me, scraping at the glass. I screamed.
Dad! Dad! Dad!
My dad ran in and the thing took off. He went after it, but it was gone. I know what I saw, and it wasn't a person. Next day, he was looking around, and there were footprints, but they weren't human. It was like a horse had been walking through a yard. Hoof prints. My dad didn't scare easy. I mean, he was a Korean War vet who won the Bronze Star. But this thing scared the hell out of him. That really terrified me.
The Goat Man is real. I believe he's real. Lots of people believe he's real. And if you don't believe he's real, come out to Prince George's County, stroll down Lover's Lane at night, and see for yourself.
The Rocky Mountains in Canada are a hotspot for Sasquatch sightings. Do these massive, hairy, man-like creatures really exist? Just ask any of the hundreds of people who believe they have encountered one or heard its eerie howl in the wilderness. One of the most remarkable Sasquatch encounters occurred in the early 1900s. Albert Osterman was a lumberman on a camping trip. A native trail guide had warned him about a legendary hairy creature called a Sasquatch, but Osterman didn't give it much thought. His first night at camp was disturbed repeatedly by sounds around his campsite. Osterman assumed it was just wildlife and eventually ignored it. A few nights later, Osterman went out for some night hunting. When he got back to camp, he discovered his campsite had been ransacked. It didn't appear to be the work of ordinary animals, but there were no humans around for miles. Shortly afterward, he discovered just what had been stalking his campsite. The creature had picked him up in his sleeping bag and dragged him for 3 hours to a small cave where he was eventually dumped in a heap. His kidnapper was a beast more than 8 feet tall. When Osterman regained consciousness, he discovered he had not just one captor, but an entire colony of the giant hairy creatures.
It's all right.
Osterman tried to flee, but his kidnapper would not allow him to escape, standing guard over him and the entire lair. The terrified man was never harmed by these creatures. They seemed more curious than threatening, even sharing their food with Osterman, who by now was hungry enough to accept. For 6 days and nights, Osterman was a prisoner to this colony of Sasquatch. Then Osterman thought of an escape plan.
Wait. Look. Look. Taste.
He took out his tobacco tin and took a small pinch, then offered the tin to the creature, who swallowed its entire contents and eventually became violently ill. Osterman seized the moment to make his escape. He didn't tell anyone about his experience for 30 years, afraid no one would believe him.
There are cryptid reptiles that creep and crawl around the hills and valleys of North America. One such reptile is the lizard man of Lee County, a reptilian humanoid which is said to inhabit areas of swampland in and around Lee County, South Carolina, along with the sewers and abandoned subways in towns near the swamp. The first reported sighting of the creature was made by Christopher Davis, a 17-year-old local boy who claimed he encountered the creature while driving home from work at 2 a.m. on June 29th of 1988. According to his account, Davis stopped on a road bordering Skapor Swamp to change a tire. When he was finished up, he reported hearing a thumping noise from behind him and turned around to see the creature running towards him. Davis said the creature tried to grab at the car and then jumped on its roof as he tried to escape, clinging on to it as he swerved from side to side in an effort to throw it off. After he returned home, Davis's side view mirror was found to be badly damaged, and scratch marks were found on the car's roof, though there were no other physical evidence of his encounter. 2 weeks after the Davis sighting, the Sheriff's Department made several plaster casts of what appeared to be three-toed footprints, measuring some 14 inches in length, but decided against sending them to the FBI for further analysis after biologists advised them that they were unclassifiable. According to South Carolina Marine Resources Department spokesperson Johnny Evans, the tracks neither matched nor could be mistaken for the footprints of any recorded animal. It appears that actual eyewitness encounters continue to this day. If you find yourself driving through Lee County, South Carolina, be sure to watch the woods and try not to stop. The lizard man may not be far away.
One of the most famous stories from the Great Dismal Swamp is one that's been passed down as an Indian legend for hundreds of years. It's about a young maiden and a young brave who were to be married. Everyone was looking forward to this wedding because it was the perfect union. Before the wedding date, however, the young maiden became ill and she died. So when it came time for wedding day, the tribe instead had a funeral. The maiden was taken out near one of her favorite spots where she could overlook the lake of the Dismal Swamp. Later, the brave had fallen asleep, and in his dreams, she had come to him, calling to him from a tree that stood near the spot where she was buried. He didn't know what to make of this dream, so he ventured into the swamp to the spot where she lay. He fell asleep there, and again she came to him in a dream, calling to him to come across the lake to be with her. He brought back a canoe, and he set out into the lake to try to find his bride. The young brave was never seen again. He did not return. But for the past 100 years, visitors to the swamp have seen the brave and his bride in a canoe paddling across the lake of the Dismal Swamp.
I was up by the Great Dismal Swamp, and I was in one of the feeder ditches, and there was this beautiful Native American woman coming toward me. rowing ever so gracefully in a canoe. And I remembered it was the legend of the lady in the lake. You know, I was glad I was fortunate enough to sit there and see it coming towards me. It was incredible. I'll never forget it.
Ogopogo is one such lake monster, said to live in the Okanagan Lake in British Columbia. Ogopogo has been allegedly seen by First Nations people since the 19th century. The most common description of Ogopogo is a 40 to 50 foot long sea serpent. British cryptozoologist Carl Schuker has categorized the Ogopogo as a mini-hump variety of lake monster and suggested it may be a kind of primitive serpentine whale, such as a Basilosaurus. In 1926, a sighting occurred at an Okanagan Mission beach. This event was supposedly witnessed by about 30 cars of people who all claimed to have seen the same thing. In 1968, Art Folden filmed what is claimed to be footage of the alleged creature, showing a large wake moving across the water. Computer analysis of the footage concluded that it was a solid three-dimensional object, and as early as 2011, cell phone footage captured seems to show two dark shapes gliding across the surface of Lake Okanagan.
So I was working nights at the time, and I didn't get off work until about 3 a.m. that night. And the drive home takes me right past Chickys Rock. So I'm driving home, this figure, what I thought was a person, appears on the road in front of me, and it was big. Like, I thought it was just this big guy, right? But the closer I got to it, the more I realized that it wasn't a person. With this thing, you could tell it wasn't an animal, right? The glow in his eyes seemed to come from within. I just slammed the horn down, and I look up, and it's gone. So, you know, going to work, I drove by the next morning, and there was no sign of anything. About 2 weeks later, I'm driving and I'm listening to one of those call-in talk radio shows, and I hear this woman describing the exact same thing I experienced.
Tell us about your experience.
This place called Chickys Rock, and it's actually right around here. I saw something come towards me, and, you know, if I described it, you probably wouldn't believe me, but it was really big, and, you know, it had these eyes that were, you know, they almost glowed.
So I called the DJ, and I begged this guy to give her my number. Yes, I need you to put me through to the DJ.
I'd called into that radio show mostly because I needed to tell somebody my experience. I was driving down the road near the rock when my car stalled. It just died out of nowhere. It was freezing, and I was pretty angry because I had just gotten my car back from the shop the day before. So I got out and I opened the hood, and that's when things got strange. I saw something out in the tree line, and it was making its way towards me. It was big, and its eyes seemed to glow in the dark. And as I got closer, I could see that it was covered with hair, but it was walking like a man. I was terrified, and finally I couldn't take it anymore, and so I slammed the hood down, and, you know, I tried to scare it. When I looked up, that thing was gone, as if it had never been there. The other strange thing is my car started right up, but I, didn't stay to think about things. I just had to get out of there. I've heard people say that that rock is some kind of gateway that lets creatures from some other reality or dimension cross over to this side. But if that's what that other dimension has, well, I hope they stay where they are, because I never want to see that thing again.
Beacon Hill Park in Victoria, British Columbia is famous for its tranquil beauty. But it is also known as the setting for one of the strangest paranormal events ever documented.
In the early 80s, my wife and I used to get up early in the morning and go jogging in the park. Our regular route took us past this rocky area. We saw a woman there. She seemed to be holding her body in some type of yoga position. She was slim, had blonde hair, and she always had on the same clothes every time we saw her. She had a black top and white pants. She was always facing toward the east, toward the rising sun. And she always had her body in the same position. Her feet were apart, and she had her arms stretched high over her head. Her head was always slightly tilted back, and here's the really strange part. Her mouth was wide open as though she were screaming, but of course there wasn't any sound.
I worked at Beacon Hill Park from about 1979 when I was a student at university, and I do remember seeing this woman several times. It was only afterwards I realized I never saw her enter the park or leave the rock. I only saw her standing on the rock, always in the early morning and always in the same pose.
We were working at the park as part of the groundskeeping crew. One of the jobs was to walk the park, pick up litter, just make sure the park was clean. We work in teams. We were behind the rock, and there was a lot of leaves all bunched up in this one area. I thought I saw an old shoe, so I went over to clear the leaves and pick up the shoe. And that's when I realized there was something wrong.
He called over to me. I had a radio, so we radioed in and got the authorities at the park to call the police. The police came and we showed them the spot. They were there for a long time, and we, of course, had to wait around to answer questions. So we were there when they took out the body. I couldn't believe what I saw. This was the body of a woman, and I knew who she was the moment I saw her. It was the woman I had seen when I worked mornings, the woman standing on the rock. But something struck me as really odd. I later realized that the woman on the rock had blonde hair and tan skin, but the victim was dark hair. She was a brunette and had very pale skin. It was as if the woman on the rock was a negative version of the murder victim.
The autopsy revealed the woman had been strangled before she was buried in a shallow grave behind the rock. Her husband had reported her missing several months earlier, but based on the condition of the body, she had only been dead a short time. Was the murder victim the same woman who had been seen for several years, standing on the rock, just yards from where her body was discovered? And if so, why did she appear in the reverse image of her true self?
About 6 weeks after we heard about the murder, my wife and I were out jogging in the park on our regular route when we were stopped dead in our tracks. Up on the rock was the woman again, standing in the same position, her feet apart, arms above her head tilted back, and her mouth open as though she were screaming. And if that isn't enough to stand up the hair on your body, she looked as she did exactly in real life. She had black hair and a pale complexion. She was wearing a white shirt with black pants. And as we stood there, just really stunned, she disappeared.
Flying humanoids have been reported over the Americas in recent times. In March 2000, a sudden change in the current UFO sightings reported in Mexico took place when Salvador Guerrero, one of the most respected skywatchers with many hours of UFO videos, had a rare sighting. While doing his regular skywatch on the roof of his home, Guerrero encountered something so bizarre, it's opened an entirely new chapter in the history of Mexican UFO research. At first, Salvador thought the object could be a dark UFO high in the sky, so he started videotaping as usual. When he zoomed in, he couldn't believe what he saw through the viewfinder. It was a dark, solid object which was almost static in the sky, spinning slowly on its axis, featuring what looked to be a human form with arms and legs perfectly visible, giving the impression that it was floating freely in the air. Some months later, in December of that year, Salvador, along with Juan Flores, videotaped another flying humanoid monster in the same place in the sky. Salvador Guerrero's March 2000 flying humanoid sighting signaled the beginning of a series of similar sightings in Mexico, and more reports and videos of these strange flying creatures followed, creating a state of intense interest among Mexican ufologists. A commercial airline pilot from Aero, California reported the sighting of a little flying man who was flying at the same altitude of the airplane before landing. According to the pilot, this flying man had a kind of backpack on his back and was flying freely. The pilot added he saw perfectly well arms and legs. These strange flying men have been seen throughout Mexico and as far north as Texas and California. Many sightings have been well documented on video. Despite the amount of evidence, testimonials, and data gathered in 14 years of research by qualified monster hunters, no one has a clue what these flying creatures are. Mothman is a legendary creature first seen in the Point Pleasant area of West Virginia from November 15th of 1966 to the following year, December 15th. The first newspaper report was published in the Point Pleasant Register, dated November 16th. And on November 12th, 5 men who were digging a grave at a cemetery near Clendenin, West Virginia, claimed to see a man-like figure fly low from the trees over their heads. This would be the first known report of the Mothman. Then, on December 15th, 1967, the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Gallipolis, Ohio, over the Ohio River mysteriously collapsed, sending cars and their occupants plunging into the icy water below. The collapse of the Silver Bridge and the death of 46 people gave rise to legends that the Mothman sightings and the bridge collapse were connected. Did an alien creature or supernatural beast bring evil to Point Pleasant, West Virginia in the 1960s? Cryptozoologists continue to receive reports of the Mothman to this day.
Years ago, there was a young lady that lived on the edge of the swamp. And on her wedding day, her groom-to-be had gone into the swamp to go fishing and bring back the meat for the table for that night after the wedding. It came time for the wedding, and the groom did not reappear. And they all became very worried about him. Well, still decked out in her wedding gown, she went into the swamp looking for her husband-to-be. Well, no one ever saw her again, or the groom. But to this day, fishermen who come into the swamp early in the morning will see a lady on the southern shore fishing, decked out in her bright white wedding gown. If they try to approach her by boat, she disappears into a white mist, and the mist hangs over the water.
When I first came to the swamp 30-some years ago, it was still a privately owned piece of land before it became a national wildlife refuge. I had the opportunity to meet many of the old-timers here who had hunted and fished for many, many years. And they very often had a lot of interesting stories to tell about the swamp. One night, in the early evening, a good biologist friend of mine came up to my house, and he was obviously very agitated and worried, and he had just been down to the swamp on Washington Ditch. As he rounded the corner to the last little bit to get to the lake, he was rather astonished to see two people walking ahead of him toward the lake. He thought it was very strange because he hadn't passed any cars on the way, and he was coming up on them, of course, to tell them that it was not a good idea to be in here. He noticed that they were wearing very odd clothes, and he described the man as having a fishing pole. So the other very strange thing was that the woman had a dress on, which he found very astonishing because women didn't usually go hiking in their dresses. As he drove up to tell them that they shouldn't be in there or to help them in any way he could, they vanished. As he was telling us this story, I remembered the legend of the fisherman who was lost in the swamp with his bride, and it sounded very much, the description that he gave was of these two people. The very interesting thing was that he never had heard that story or read about that legend in his life, so he had no idea that what he'd actually seen was actually ghosts from an old legend.
It was early in the morning. I think it was around 4 a.m. I couldn't sleep that morning, so I just decided to jump into the boat and go down the swamp and throw a few lines in, see if I could catch something. Went out there, and there wasn't a soul in sight. Again, it was 4 in the morning, and I see this beautiful woman wearing a white dress. And believe it or not, she was fishing as well. Actually, it looked like a wedding dress. Again, there was no one around us, and I thought it was pretty weird of her being there in a white dress fishing. And she noticed me, she smiled. So, of course, I paddled a little ways past her, and I just happened to look back, and she was gone. Looked around a little bit to see if I can find out where she had went. No signs of movement or anything, and it really freaked me out. One minute she's there, the next minute she's gone. Never forget it.
The legend of Boggy Creek told a horrific story of people in Falk, Arkansas, encountering a three-toed monster. The Falk monster, also known as the Southern Sasquatch, is a legendary creature reported near the town of Falk in Miller County, Arkansas during the 1960s. The creature was accused of attacking a local family. Initial sightings of the creature were concentrated in the Jonesville-Boggy Creek area, where it was blamed for the destruction of local livestock. Later, sightings were made several hundred miles to the north and east of Falk. Various reports between 1971 and 1974 described it as being a large hominid-like creature covered in dark hair. It was estimated to be about 7 feet tall, with a weight of 250 to 300 pounds. A variety of tracks and claw marks have been discovered which are claimed to belong to the creature. One set of footprints reportedly measured 17 inches in length and 7 inches wide, and all reports show that the creature only had 3 toes. Local legend also holds that the creature can be traced back to sightings in 1946. Most early sightings were in the region of Jonesville, and at that time the creature was known as the Jonesville Monster. Many movies have been made about the monster. However, actual sightings have continued to occur since its original appearance in the 1940s.
I'm a member of the local search and rescue team, and we had gotten a call that a man had committed suicide up in the wooded area around Chickys Rock. So our team was dispatched to try to retrieve and recover the body. When we got to site, we split up, which is standard operating procedure to try to cover as much ground as possible, as quickly as possible. I had just cut through some pretty heavy brush down to one of the main access trails. That's a little bit easier walking. Hadn't seen anything yet. Just walking through access road on the trail. So far, nothing yet. Out. Suddenly, I felt an intense cold feeling. I looked off to my right. I didn't really know how to describe this for you. A shadowy figure, very dark, about 8 or 9 feet tall. It actually looked down at me and pointed at me and then disappeared. Just seconds later, this thing popped up over to my left, only about 15 feet from me. It looked like it was about to move towards me, and I don't mind saying it, I was completely terrified, and I got the hell out of there as fast as I could. I will not do any more work up on Chickys Rock. I won't go back up there to this day.